we turn our attention to SABMiller. Beer producers Grupo Modelo and Heineken are said to be blocking consumer choice in Mexico, the world's sixth biggest beer market. Mexico's two largest brewers are said to offer loans, upfront payments and refrigerators to restaurants and retailers that agree not to serve other brands. This is according to Armando Valenzuela, the head of SABMiller's Mexico unit. Mexico's beer market is a prize for brewers due to growth prospects as US and European consumption stagnates. Now, SAB has been trying to operate in Mexico for some 2 decades, and the market is sewn up by Modelo and Heineken. 90% of the Mexican market is sewn up. They haven't had much traction in 2 decades.
Yeah.
They have filed a number of antitrust complaints, of course.
If they struggle for 2 decades to break into that market, I wouldn't necessarily see anything imminently going to change about that. Given that history, I don't necessarily think this is a market that SAB necessarily has to focus all its energy in. I think the rest of Latin America is doing wonders for the business as it is. So I'd be focusing my energy elsewhere, really.
So why suffer the headache then in Mexico?
Look, Mexico has a place with some issues. You know, I don't know, maybe they just have to organize themselves a big gang and go and do what everybody does in Mexico, and that's shoot a few people. I mean, you know, Mexico, it's an odd environment. I'm sure that there are part of their Northern American division, people who've been desperate to get into that market for ages, and it's a disgrace that they haven't been able to. But maybe they just got to keep up the pressure.
Right, now let's talk about Foster's. That acquisition is a done deal. Do you like it? Do you like where SABMiller is going? And of course there's a debate. Do we still attribute 80% of earnings for SABMiller to the emerging market space?
Yeah, I think with this acquisition that's probably going to go down to closer to 70%. Sure. From my perspective, the deal really, if I can say, moves the margin a little bit lower, because you really...
You don't need to be polite. You don't like this deal. If you don't like the deal, tell me you don't like the deal.
I don't like the deal. I think where SAB has done well over the last couple of years has really been in fast-growing emerging markets. And if you're looking at the Australian beer market, it's really remained flat for the better part of the last 5 years. And I don't necessarily see any quick growth in that market. So I'm actually quite surprised that they focused such a large transaction on that market in particular.
Have they lost their minds with this Foster's acquisition? The market seems very undecided.
Well, the market is trading at above 300 Rand a share. So the fact of the matter is you could have bought this thing 10 years ago for 50 Rand a share, and it's now, you know, been a 6-bagger. What SABMiller have succeeded in doing is taking these global beer brands and then diversifying them around their global production base. As Tshepo says, they've bought very well in emerging markets, particularly in Latin America, an incredible transaction where they then professionalize production and they've got the margins wider. The problem, of course, is that the margins were already very tight with Foster's, and nobody can understand why they would go and do that unless you think that, you know, brand Australia is going to like sell well in India and so on, so which I suppose it might. You know, everybody wants to be Australian apparently. So, I mean, for me, the problem, however, is that how much can you squeeze out of the beer lemon? In other words, how much can you kind of increase margins, and how much can you get people to sort of see them as brands rather than as consumable items? I mean, it's been a fantastic story. So again, I feel almost dishonest sitting here saying that it's not a stock I like, because it has done so well.
And we are talking about the second largest brewer globally. I mean, that's the magnitude of the stock.
That is the magnitude. I think maybe the Indian market is one that they're trying to focus on. They have lost market cap over the last year in that particular market. And that, I mean, with a population of 1.6 odd billion, the sphere for growth there is quite strong. They've recently come out looking to expand into China as well. So I think maybe the Foster acquisition must be in relation to those two markets. Maybe they feel that brand will grow in those markets, who knows.
What do you expect to see from SABMiller in the near term?
Well, I agree that the challenge really is China, because CR Snow, which is their business there, is like one of the larger players there now. They're not alone. There's a big state-owned corporation, and business in China is always tricky. India has some cultural issues with booze. You know, they're not entirely into booze, but then they drink a lot of hardtack. on the sly. So I'm not quite sure how.
So you've
the
actually got to
booze-
change a whole cultural stance
Yeah.
in India to get, I think it's 1.2 billion people. I did some research the other
There
day
you
in
go.
India.
I
1.3
might
in
be
China
overstep-
billion and 1.2 billion in India.
Part of the problem with India, of course, will be the very large Muslim population, which automatically rules out that fair chunk of that population.
But I don't think as a species, humans are going to consume 5 times the amount of beer in 2 decades than they do at the moment. I think cell phones, you could safely say people will consume 5 times the amount of bandwidth. But with beer, there's a limit. There's a practical limit that you can consume without being problematic in terms of work on Mondays.
So take, you've done the 6-bagger element.
So I think
gone
the
from
problem
50 rand
is
to
once you've
300 rand, take your money and
professionalized
run.
the global industry, once people are not making beer from mealies and sorghum anymore, then you have the beer industry. The question is, how much more can you be better in that environment? And for me, I think they're beginning to reach the point at which the story has played itself out.
Tshepo, hot or not?
Not hard at all. On a through the cycle PE of 34, even more expensive than Richmond. Not hot at all. And given the growth challenges, I'd be staying away.
Paul, do you own it before you tell me hot or not?
My only relationship with SABMiller is with consuming the products on Sundays. I must say, not hot for me, as cold as a chilled castle.